here are some essential elements that support coalition: that shared vision and collaborative goals, diverse member recruitment and engagement plans. With the diverse members, that's crucial. But without diversity, you have a gap in your knowledge, you have a gap in awareness of what's really going on, and you're really not doing things in an equitable manner to ensure people have access or to ensure people are knowledgeable about the policy change that could be occurring in your community. You also, when it comes to diverse members, you might not be getting the input or the knowledge about the communities that you're serving because you don't have diverse members at the table. And like deeper about diverse groups is we have multi-sectoral partnerships, which is when you're including organizations and community. A lot of the times we're talking about only having partners at the table that are part of our coalition, which is that cross-sectoral partnership. And that, again, is another piece of that diversity, right? Not just diversity in race and ethnicity, but diversity in the types of partners that we're working to have at the table of our coalition. And so making sure there's a recruitment process in place to ensure that you have diverse members, organizations, even businesses, right? We want businesses at the table because typically they don't have restrictions on how they can use their funds. Nonprofit organizations typically do have restrictions on how they can use their funds, and you're a lot more limited. So how can we partner with those business owners in different ways to share resources, right? They might be able to have individuals for their company come and volunteer for a community engagement event or provide some subject matter expertise in some other way that you never thought of that could benefit your organization. They just typically don't operate in the same mindset as a business. And you can have that unique perspective come in and tell you more about how to operate your nonprofit like a business. And then having engagement plans. How can we keep our members engaged and be culturally relevant in those engagement plans and opportunities to maintain sustainability of the members of the coalition? Working groups and or task forces are crucial as well, so that we're not putting all the ideas right there on the table and expecting everyone to work on the same thing. And there's just so many different initiatives going on. So splitting those things up in different task forces and putting people's skills where they belong or where they prefer is crucial again. Also, with those strategic efforts versus those short term or short lived tactics, the strategic efforts are going to carry you way further and be a lot more efficient than those one off tactics that typically only push the needle a little bit. It doesn't really push it far enough for it to really create change. Resource mobilization, sustainability plans. What happens if X, Y, and Z occurs? What will happen to the coalition if the policy doesn't change? What happens to the coalition if we don't get these fundings? Having those sustainability plans in place is crucial. And then you can know if we don't get the funds for this coalition, you'll have a plan in place on what to do next. There was a question submitted prior to the training about coalition building, and they were asking like, hey, we want to build a coalition, but we don't have someone to pay. That happens, right? Obviously, we know the only way to pay people is to get funding through donations, grants, and so forth. But if you don't have that in place, sometimes people are pro bono, but is that something that they want to do? Maybe not. So if you don't have the funds to pay someone to operate a coalition, you have to think of that plan B. And sometimes someone won't get paid. And that's just how you might have to navigate that. And you could use a community champion to step in to lead the organization or operate like the inner workings of that coalition if you don't have a staff member that you can pay. So again, with that diverse member recruitment, how are we utilizing those community champions who are familiar with the organization? They definitely have buy-in on what we're trying to do, and they are recruiting other members of the community to be a part of this coalition. So that could be a way. There's a lot of people who we worked with in the past that either they were retired or again, they're super dedicated to the outcomes that the coalition is trying to achieve. And then we have the inclusive practices and conflict resolution strategies. That's really part of that beginning stage of the development of your coalition, having those things outlined, who is going to address what, and then what's that process for if someone might need to not be a part of the coalition anymore. But conflict is going to arise because that's just so many moving pieces of a coalition, so many different priorities. And again, there's so many needs. So that conflict resolution piece is crucial, and a lot of people overlook